Welcome to another episode of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. It's Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. A progressive and populist insight into Michigan's political and cultural world. And of course, an entertaining show on how to make Michigan's political machine work for the people, and not just the elite few. Now, from the Left of Lansing headquarters from his mid-Michigan attic, it's time for the award-winning Pat Johnston. It's all yours, Pat.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to another installment of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. I am Pat Johnston, and doesn't it seem like it was already a couple of weeks ago that someone tried to rush through security at the correspondence dinner in Washington, D.C. and attack dear leader and the regime? It does, doesn't it? I mean, had I recorded this show first thing on Monday morning, that's all I would talk about for the first few minutes. Now, I did talk about that attack in my Monday musing, and if you listened, you heard me say that because of all of the gaslighting from this regime, my first thoughts didn't revolve around who was hurt, who was the attacker, what was his motive, etc. My immediate reaction was, what would be the angle for this regime? How would the regime use this attempted attack for its own gain? Now, I didn't believe in some conspiracy theory like it was staged or anything like that. I mean, it seems like the attacker thought he had to take it upon himself to violently defeat the regime, which isn't what the progressive movement is all about. And it seems like the guy didn't like podcaster Hassan Piker, so I guess you can't really say that he was also some big-time progressive. But the angle for the regime after this attack was, of course, to silence any kind of dissent, which I think many of you could see coming miles away. But the other angle for the regime was to get its precious little ballroom built using working class taxpayer dollars, of course. Oh, yeah. I mean, when it came to my Monday musing, I talked about how the ballroom was being financed by oligarchs from the billionaire Epstein Class, like from Palantir, Amazon, and Google. But after the attack, which was thwarted, by the way, and the dude really didn't get close to dear leader or the dinner, we suddenly heard MAGA Republicans in Congress say it was time for us, the taxpayers, to pony up so dear leader can entertain the Epstein Class donors in some garish ballroom. Oh, now they claim the attack shows how much we need a ballroom, but dear leader was pushing this whole ballroom thing before last weekend's attack. I mean, the regime out of nowhere just flat out tore down the east wing of the White House, which I thought was our house. I seem to recall always being told that. NBC News reports that Republicans are right now split on whether or not to fund the 90,000 square foot ballroom with taxpayer funds. NBC is owned by Comcast, by the way, which also, of course, donated to the ballroom cause. I mean, it's always about appeasing corporate and government greed. One hand washes the other. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm sure there's no conflicts of interest or possibilities of corruption. I mean, we should really just give the Trump regime the benefit of the doubt since they do everything on the up and up, right? I mean, right? The cost of this stupid ballroom is $400 million. Now, you'd think with the American economy in free fall, dear leader promising an indefinite blockade on his war in Iran, and with a record 55% of working class Americans saying that their financial situations are worsening, according to a new Gallup poll, you'd think that some MAGA Republicans would want to stand clear of this one, but no, you know it, I know it, they won't. I guess a couple will go against their dear leader, but do you really think a majority of them will? Do you really? I mean, do you think in Michigan, someone like John James will defy their dear leader, or Tom Barrett in Congress, or Jack Bergman up in the UP, or Bill Huizenga in Western Michigan, or Tim Walberg? I mean, do you really think Lisa McClain will part from Donald Trump on delivering his precious little ballroom? You really think Lisa McClain will buck the trend? I doubt it. I mean, we're discussing ballrooms when 55% of Americans say their pocketbooks are getting worse, with skyrocketing gas prices nearing $5 in many parts of Michigan, and with draconian work requirements scheduled to take place for those on Medicaid. But we're discussing ballrooms. The economy is worsening for the working class. Healthcare is unaffordable for millions, but we're placing work requirements on the working class while asking the same working class to ante up and kick in $400 million for dear leader Trump's ballroom? Are you kidding me? No, really, are you kidding me? Michigan continues to see job losses. Tariffs are destroying the state's manufacturing and tourism industries. And our national debt, of course, is out of control thanks to endless wars and endless tax cuts for the Epstein Class. But hey, are you American or not? Ante up for dear leader and his regime's glitzy little ballroom. So what if gas prices are out of control? As MAGA Republican Michigan U.S. Senate candidate Florida Mike Rogers says about high gas prices.
We're going to be fine. We got plenty of oil.
Yeah, just deal with it. Now, you could ask yourself if higher gas prices really hurt someone like Florida Mike Rogers, who made lots of money in lobbying for the defense industry while living, of course, in Florida. I'm just going to go on a limb. I'm going to guess that higher gas prices really don't affect someone like Florida Mike Rogers. And while higher gas prices are happening because of Trump's and Israel's idiotic and unconstitutional war in Iran, you'd think the billions in subsidies and tax cuts that we give oil companies on a yearly basis would cut our gas prices. I mean, that's what I've been told for years. I was told if we just give more corporate tax cuts, that will lead to lower prices. Also, and I just have to say this, I think we as a country could perhaps consider a robust public transportation system to cut down on driving, and that would also help lower gas prices. But I know, that's a dream. Look, it seems to me someone is getting royally screwed in this whole deal, and as always, it is the American working class. Leftoflansing at Gmail is the best way to reach me, and don't forget to follow me on my socials. That's leftoflansing at gmail.com. So I mentioned Florida Mike Rogers, who appears like he'll be the handpicked Republican candidate for Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat in this year's election, and handpicked I mean by dear leader Trump. However, on the Democratic Party side of things, well, as we've been talking about here for a while, that primary race to face Florida Mike isn't as cut and dry. Now, the Detroit Free Press's Todd Spangler reported this week a new independent poll, this one done by Glengarriff Group polling firm in Lansing for the Detroit Regional Chamber, shows that U.S. Representative Haley Stevens has 24.9% support. That's basically 25% support, compared to 22.9%, or basically 23%, for former Wayne County and Detroit Health Director Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, and State Senator Mallory McMorrow is trailing both of them as she sits now at 16%. With a margin of error of plus or minus 4.4 percentage points, that means that if the poll is accurate, Stevens may have the slightest of leads, but that she and Dr. Abdul are roughly tied for that lead. Now, let's take that poll, which gets like a C rating, I think, from pollsters, and combine it with the poll of polls that were compiled by a group called Race to the White House, and it shows that the primary polling averages now shows that Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is leading with 23% of the vote. Mallory McMorrow is second with 21%, and Haley Stevens is just behind there at 20.5%. So you compare that to the last time Race to the White House compiled all of these polls back in March, and it showed then that McMorrow had the lead, Stevens was in second, and Dr. Abdul was in third place. So now the numbers have changed, and Dr. Abdul is now leading. And I'm just going to guess here, it's just a little speculation, but I'm guessing that doing those college tours at U of M and MSU with the popular progressive podcaster Hassan Piker, boy, that was a lot of alliteration there, but I guess that really wasn't such a bad move after all for Dr. Abdul, as he is now winning in the average of polls. Now, with that being said, and it has to be noted here, that Detroit Regional Chamber poll, like many other polls, still shows around 30% of voters saying they remain undecided. So this Senate primary is going to be watched closely because Dr. Abdul, the candidate who's running on Medicare for All, abolishing ICE, and ending Trump's war in Iran, is rising in the polls. And it appears from many of the polls that his numbers are holding steady to rising, while McMorrow and Stevens keep going back and forth. But here's the thing. State Senator Mallory McMorrow's numbers are dropping. And you know what? She's got no one else to blame but herself. She could have gone all in on Medicare for all, but she chose to attack it by saying, do you want Trump running your health care? I mean, well, he's running it into the ground as we speak, and it wasn't all that awesome before Trump. Maybe actually putting a system into place that no one president could destroy would be a decent start. This for-profit healthcare system we've got right now ain't working for the working class. I mean, but it was just pandering to some invisible middle ground. And when millions of Michiganders can't afford health care, proposing half-assed measures wasn't a winning issue. It just wasn't for Mallory McMorrow. Same with saying that we could reform ICE. I mean, the guy who shot Alex Preddy in Minneapolis last winter just got reassigned elsewhere. I mean, how do you reform ICE? How do you reform that? While we've got a hunger strike happening at the concentration camp up in Baldwin. How do you reform this system? No one's ever told me how to reform it, but that's what Mallory McMorrow did. That's what she suggested. Although let's not forget that Congresswoman and Miss APAC herself, Haley Stevens, toured that ICE concentration camp up in Baldwin a few months ago, and the only thing she could really say when she got out of there was laud the staff there because there were a good amount of women working there. Oh, God. Can't take it. Well, back to McMorrow. I shared a story on my Patreon page this week on how, thanks to some outstanding reporting from The Lever, the McMorrow campaign is apparently benefiting from a web of billionaire donors who are using, our country's lax campaign finance laws to funnel money to several so-called moderate candidates in an effort to defeat more progressive ones. And they are backing Mallory McMorrow. You see, many Democratic billionaire donors, some of them tech bro data center billionaires, are funding establishment Democratic Party operatives and consultants to work closely with these campaigns, which, at one time used to be against the law. And as I said on my Patreon page regarding this story, to me, it just sucks. It really does. It just sucks that some candidates believe this is the only way to win. Now, Mallory McMorrow says that she doesn't take any corporate PAC money. That's true. However, she's accepting all kinds of money through this web of billionaire donors. So she may not be getting the money from corporations, but she's still getting them from billionaires who want to build data centers. And it just sucks. It really does suck. And it just shows how much disdain these elites in party and consulting politics have for the working class voters who've grown tired of being not only overlooked, but by being mocked by this elite class. Yes, mocked. I mean, they're essentially telling Democratic-based voters that while their marches against authoritarianism and the Epstein Class are cute and all, money is where power will always reside within the Democratic Party. They have to protect themselves. They don't want us, the rabble, getting involved. So be on the lookout for organizations such as The Bench or Majority Democrats, because they're backed by rich donors who want as little change happening to the current system as possible, a system in which they benefit from each and every day. It's always about serving the Epstein class. You know it, and I know it. And then the week didn't get any better for the Mallory McMorrow campaign when some tweets that she sent way back when, but were since deleted, were apparently recovered. And while it's not the worst news, they don't really paint McMorrow as a real fan of the state of Michigan. Now, here's how Ben Solis reports it from Michigan Advance, and I'm quoting here. CNN used the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine to find the tweets, and some describe McMorrow as a California resident up until July 2016, which runs counter to the claim in her 2025 autobiography of being a Michigan resident as of 2014. McMorrow published posts that referred to voting in California's 2016 primary, described herself as a constituent of Democratic California Congressman Ted Lieu, and said that she voted in person in 2014 in a Los Angeles area district. She was a resident of that district at that time. CNN also notes that McMorrow was only registered to vote in Michigan starting in 2016. Another post from 2024 apparently showed McMorrow chastising a voter for doing the same thing. Now, Ben Solis continued, some of the deleted posts, which were uncovered in a separate New York Post story, contain what CNN described as disparaging comments about Michigan and quote-unquote middle America, following the election of President Trump in 2016. One said that she wished she never left California, even as she was apparently trying to plant roots in Michigan, and complained about the weather. Okay, I'll forgive Mallory McMorrow on making any comments about Michigan's weather, since I think that's kind of what we all do here in Michigan, right? So I don't care about that part. But making disparaging comments about Michigan and Middle America in 2016, look, it's not a good look, and it makes McMorrow appear to be, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I got it. Inauthentic. And I mean, we know Haley Stevens, the establishment party pick, is all about corporate donations and the corporate bribes. I mean, she's authentic in that way, I suppose. But we know that Haley Stevens is also all about AIPAC dollars as well. Niraj Waraku from the Detroit Free Press found this clip of Haley Stevens from December 2023 when she proclaimed that she will continue to fight for the people of Israel.
And in the United States Congress, I will continue to fight for the people of Israel. I will continue to fight for Israel's existence. Israel comes to me in my dreams. I see Israel's future, and I know that Israel will continue to exist for the Jewish people.
Wow, I wish that she would show that kind of fight for the American working class. I mean, it's no wonder. It's no wonder to me that the working class Michiganders are helping Dr. Abdul El-Sayed's numbers steadily climb to the point where he's leading in this whole race. He's actually staked out strong positions, working class positions, while Stevens and McMorrow continue to follow the money. Sad. Coming up here in a moment, I'll talk with a state Senate candidate around the Grand Rapids area who's not following corporate PAC money or billionaire money. He's running to help bring single-payer health care to Michigan, to increase the minimum wage, to strengthen the working class, and to be a true voice for the working class who cannot be bought and paid for in Lansing. Ivan Diaz is running for a Michigan State Senate seat in the 29th District in Kent County, and he'll join me to talk about his campaign right after these words. You are listening to LOL.
You're listening to Michigan's premier progressive podcast. It's Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. Have you ever heard Pat's lectures on why desserts with fruit aren't really desserts? Or why the 70s produced the greatest movies of all time? I have. So be happy you're just hearing him rant about politics. If you'd like to contact Pat about politics or debate how cocoa is technically a fruit, send a message to leftoflansing@gmail.com. Here's Pat Johnston.
Hey, special thanks to all of you who've subscribed to Michigan's premier progressive podcast wherever you are listening. And thanks for giving the show a 5-star review as well. And special thanks to those of you who subscribed to Left of Lansing on Patreon. I put up our weekly polls there. And hey, don't forget to check out some other thoughts and stories that I post there as well. And Patreon put up a Quips button. I think that's what they call it, Quips, a button there. So that way I can just leave some short random thoughts there, like, you know, how oil companies are making record profits thanks to Trump's war in Iran, while also receiving massive corporate tax breaks thanks to the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which of course was nothing but screwing over the working class in a myriad of ways. And I guess I'll be allowed to even post other ideas there, like why I think Prince was better than Michael Jackson. Hey, that's me. So visit Left of Lansing on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Left of Lansing. All right. I wanted to catch up with progressive Democratic candidate for Michigan's 29th State Senate District, Ivan Diaz, here this week, because when I contacted Ivan to be on the show, I said I always planned on having him back on in May. He was on the show last year. Well, May is essentially here. I cannot believe how fast this year seems like it's going. And Ivan Diaz is running a common sense progressive platform that's built on putting more power back into the working class, while he's not only facing the billionaire Epstein and DeVos class of West Michigan, but he's also facing off against the Michigan Democratic Party establishment. And, you know, with the August primary only being about 3 months away, I know, again, hard to believe that, Ivan's making a push to be the working class voice in this state Senate race. And like other working class progressives, Ivan's pushing that Overton window back towards the people, which is desperately needed after 50 years of that window sliding towards corporate authoritarianism, and in some ways by both parties. So Ivan Diaz, thanks so much for taking a little time to visit with us here again on Michigan's premier progressive podcast. How's the campaign been going?
Of course, thank you. It's so great to be back. The campaign has been great. Spring is just about here. We've got the last little sprinkles of winter hitting us. We're through the state convention. It's canvassing season, so we're spending every day getting to meet the people of Michigan's 29th State Senate District and talking to voters, making sure that people are aware of what's happening. It's time to get started.
One thing that I always liked about you and your campaign, Ivan, is that you have always been interested in what's happening in your community and also across the state. And if you don't mind me asking here, we were talking off the air and you said that you've been in Lansing today doing some work there as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing?
Yeah, so I used to work for this nonprofit organization called Michigan United, but now I just volunteer with them. And we were in Lansing today talking to legislators about all kinds of issues, but specifically around things like data centers and single-payer healthcare. So the group that I was with met with about 4 or 5 different state representative offices to talk to them about single-payer healthcare, about Representative Reagan's MyCare bill, and why we hope that they will support it. Kind of just generally about the political moment that we're in. So it was great being surrounded by regular working class Michiganders who understand these issues and know what they want. And hopefully we'll have the legislature doing what the people want here soon.
Yeah, it's great that you're trying to lend your voice there in that effort. And I've had Representative Reagan on the show here a couple of times talking about her push for a single payer system. And I guess it's safe to assume, Ivan, that's something that you want to push in the state Senate as well?
Absolutely. I've worked with people who have been denied healthcare. I've been denied healthcare. I've worked with people who have had to create GoFundMe accounts to get the healthcare they need. I've trained people on how they can appeal denials from their health insurance companies for healthcare that they already paid for. It's time to change the system. And we all know that the system is the way it is because those same corporations that are profiting off of our healthcare are paying the politicians to keep the system the same. And so that's the system that we're facing up against.
Is one reason why you decided to back a single payer system is because you yourself have experienced the pain of what is our current broken for-profit system?
Yes. I mean, I've not only myself, my mom, my family, my friends, my family members, everybody that I know essentially has a healthcare story or knows somebody who has a tragic healthcare story. I can't count the number of close ones or people who I know who have, again, had to resort to GoFundMe accounts to get healthcare. It's a despicable system. And, 10 years ago when I graduated from high school, I hoped naively that in the next couple of years, we would have single payer. 10 years later, and we don't. But every day that passes, more and more people support it. And again, it's only a matter of time until that need and what the people want reaches our legislature.
Hey, but look on the bright side, though. I mean, we do have a war on Iran right now. And,
right.
Betsy DeVos around your backyard there. I mean, she got herself a nice tax cut thanks to, the MAGA Republican leadership there in D.C. I mean, so things are looking up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we have the president openly saying that we can't pay for childcare because we got to pay for a illegal war for a foreign country. That's exactly the moment that we're in.
One thing too, if I can just stick with this single payer system and the need for like a universal healthcare system, and especially the push here in Michigan, what I like about Representative Ryan Gans's push is that this is like, if I'm not mistaken, Ivan, I mean, this is like covering things like mental health care and dental care. I mean, we're just not talking about regular health care, like just going to the doctor for a pain or for an illness, but this is covering other things. And it just seems like that is so sensible. And in the long run, it would save us money too.
Yeah, I mean, it would save us money not only in our healthcare system, but also in these sky-high car insurance rates that we have to pay. A lot of people don't know that the reason why we have such high car insurance rates is because we have to pay for, people who get injured in car accidents for healthcare for the rest of their life. And that's what part of why these rates are so high. And so we pass a single-payer healthcare system. We not only guarantee healthcare to every Michigander, we lower costs in healthcare, and we lower our car insurance costs.
That's a great point, too. That is a great point about our car insurance rates, too. I remember when that bill was passed. What was that? That auto insurance reform bill, I think around 2019 or something.
Yeah.
Governor Whitmer signed it into law. A lot of Republicans are celebrating. Some Democrats, of course, backed it. But there were many of us who were saying, but wait a second, the rates, first of all, the rates aren't going to go down. And secondly, it's just going to end up also costing those who really need the care because all of a sudden now that's been ripped away from them.
Right, exactly. It's the same kind of neoliberal strategy to put a Band-Aid on a clearly broken system, all because the corporations don't want us to change the system. And that's exactly what we have to fight against, because what we saw in 2022 was Democrats winning the trifecta, and what did we get from it? And that was exactly some of the points that we were making to some legislators today, is if you want to ignore all the other points, let's just talk power politics. If you want to win the trifecta and hold the trifecta, do something for working class Michiganders. Make them feel economic improvement in their daily lives, and you will hold that trifecta. So I guess we'll see what happens.
One measure in your agenda that I know that you are really backing is a strong minimum wage increase. And did I see that you are advocating something like around $20, $25? What was that, Ivan?
Yeah, 25. So years ago, when I was still in college, I saw this study that said that some economists did it, and it said that if we still based the minimum wage off of productivity levels, then today the minimum wage would be around $25 to $26 an hour. And so in reality, what my hope would be is to introduce the very first bill that I introduced when I get to Lansing is to gradually raise the minimum wage to have it match productivity levels so that it matches productivity levels by 2030. So raise it essentially 25% every year for the next 4 years until it reaches productivity levels, which again, today is $25 an hour. 4 years from now, I'm sure will be much higher than that. So that's essentially the plan that I have for my first bill.
Okay, and I was wondering how you got to that number, and that makes a lot of sense. And what I like about what you just said, too, is you want to pass the bill to raise the minimum wage, but it wouldn't be, you pass the bill, and then here it is tomorrow. You would give people in businesses time to kind of get adjusted to it.
Exactly. And when I graduated from high school 10 years ago, we were talking about a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
And today, April of 2026, 10 years later, we still don't have a $15 minimum wage. And so we do need to raise wages, but we also need to your point, support businesses. But here's the key point, is the Amazons and the Walmarts of the world don't need our support. We can, in fact, afford to raise taxes on them. What we can support, however, are small, working class mom and pop shops, small businesses, micro businesses, even some medium businesses. Those are the types of businesses who hold up our economy, especially when these huge corporations go around, making decisions that then cause drastic, unfortunate economic consequences for working class Michiganders.
Would you want to see a change if you get into the state Senate, Ivan? Would you want to see a change to that corporate welfare program? I call it corporate welfare, but it's called the SOAR program. And, we've seen all these studies show that despite all the hundreds and hundreds of millions, even I think over $1 billion that we have put into this SOAR program, that it's really only produced nominal jobs, and we're not really getting a bang for our buck with this SOAR program. Would you want to see that whole system changed and maybe try to divert some of that money back to the communities?
Absolutely. I would rather spend those hundreds of millions, billions of dollars even on our communities, like you said, on public transportation, on our roads, on our schools, on our healthcare clinics and hospitals. That's where I want to spend that money, not giving it to corporations. Again, if anything, we can afford to raise the corporate tax rate on some corporations, especially multinational corporations. They need to start paying their fair share. Billionaires need to start paying their fair share. Giving free money away to corporations is not what I'm going to do, and that's not what I did actually when I was a Kent County commissioner. I voted against these millions of dollars of public dollars that flowed to these DeVos projects. That's what I did as a county commissioner, and that's what I'm going to continue to do when I'm in Lansing.
It seems like a good segue there, since you brought up your time as on the Kent County Commission. For those who didn't hear our discussion when you were on the show last year, maybe you could take this time just to give a little bit of your background, how long that you've been in West Michigan, and what drew you to politics.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the only candidate that was born and raised in District 29 and who lived my entire life in District 29. I was born in December of 1997, have lived in the south side of Grand Rapids since then. Went to public school, graduated public school from District 29. I've worked all kinds of really the kinds of jobs that working class, especially young people, work nowadays in the retail and service industry. Anywhere from fast food restaurants to family restaurants to grocery stores to after school programs with kids to nursing homes to working for unions to working in, for the largest credit union in the state, all here in Grand Rapids in the West Michigan area. I was the first, whether you want to call it Mexican or Native American, elected to the Kent County Board of Commissioners in 2022. I served a 2-year term there, and I chose to, rather than running for re-election, I chose to run for the 29th State Senate District when I realized that my state senator, who's currently the Majority Leader Brinks, was going to be turned out. So this is an open seat. It's a young seat. I'm proud to be the only person in this race endorsed by the Michigan Democratic Party Progressive Caucus. The people are ready for these policies, and we're going to bring them to Lansing and finally get them passed.
Yeah, what was your reaction to getting that endorsement from the Progressive Caucus?
I was very proud, especially because by the time the election happens, we will have been running for 3 years. And that's because we're not rich. We're not wealthy. We don't have wealthy family members and friends who can throw us thousands of dollars to run our campaign. We're not going after corporate money. We're clearly, because of the policies that we're running on, we wouldn't even ask them for support. And so the only way we knew from the beginning that the only way that we could win this race, because of all of the money that we knew was going to be spent against us, was by organizing the people of Senate District 29. And so to be recognized by the MDP Progressive Caucus as somebody who has fought for these things for years on the street to the point of getting pepper sprayed by law enforcement, it's a true honor, a true privilege. And especially given what just happened in the Michigan Democratic Party convention, it's clear that the people that the progressives are lining up for are the people who are ascendant in the Democratic Party.
Mr. Diaz, did you attend?
I did.
You did? Okay. What was your reaction to that?
My first convention ever. Not what I expected. Everywhere, all kinds of emotions, everywhere from being annoyed by Mallory McMorrow's band that was banging down the hallways and making it impossible for people to hear what was happening in the caucuses, to, being glad to see so many other progressive people in one place, to being pleasantly shocked at, I guess, shall we say, Zionist corporate politicians who support genocide getting booed. It was amazing. It was a great experience. I'll definitely be back. But also, there are some things that need to be fixed, addressed, and that's things like how long it took for the voting to get underway. Geofencing, people, it just took way too long. The amount of time that people took to make their nomination speeches, it should be like one sentence and that's it. It was a great experience, but definitely looking forward to hoping to make the process better next time around.
I read some of your statements on your socials about that, and I think those are pretty good ideas, because when I was following everything happening online from those who were in attendance there, that seemed to be one of the major complaints, was that, hey, we should have been getting this voting going earlier, should cut down on the length of these speeches, because again, there was a record, was it like over 7,000 people there, right? Was that a record
around
crowd?
7,200 is, I believe, is
Wow.
what they said. And the fact is also, there was a lot of, I said publicly that to me, a plurality of the people that were there were elders. And so, especially for elder people, we should make the voting as easy as possible and not have to make them wait so long. There were, elders standing in the back alongside me who had to sit down or take a seat or had to keep exiting the big hall to go and rest because of how long it was taking. Yeah, definitely some ideas for the future.
Hey, just a quick question then. I was watching, because I'm a political dork here, so I was watching Tim Skubik's Off the Record show on WKAR, and he had some Lansing journalists on, and I'd say like 3 or 4 of the guests on that panel, they thought that the convention would hurt Democrats because they said that the division displayed there with delegates booing some of the candidates, like Haley Stevens, for instance, or I think even a supporter of U of M board Regents member Jordan Acker, I think he was booed as well. But since you were there, what's your feeling from what you saw? Because from what I was seeing and reading, again, there were over 7,000 people there. That told me that people are motivated, and they're not just motivated. This isn't like 2024 where it's like we're motivated against Trump. No, from what I'm seeing is that you have a lot of people who are motivated on pushing for a new direction, not just against Trump, but a new direction for the Democratic Party. Was that your sense, Ivan?
Absolutely. It would be one thing if it was maybe a pocket of people who were booing or heckling, or if it was a handful of people spread out the crowd who was doing it. But it was thousands of people, and it was spread out. It seemed to me like a majority of the people in the room were booing. And it's the job of the party to listen to the voters, to listen to the Democratic Party voters. We're telling them exactly what they want. I just saw this news article that said that I think in the U of M race that 3/4 of the voters voted for Amir, and that the establishment-aligned politicians and party high-ranking party officials voted for
Jordan Acker. Yeah, Jordan Acker.
So it's again just another example of the disconnect between the average person, the average voter, the average Dem party supporter, and the political elite. We've been telling everyone who wanted to listen what we wanted for years. Like I said, in the last 10 years, the Republicans have had a trifecta in the federal and state government. The Democrats have had a trifecta in the federal and state government. And we still don't have a $15 minimum wage. And we still don't have humane immigration reform or universal housing or single-payer healthcare. If we want to achieve these things as voters, as people, as a society, then we have to start electing a different kind of politician.
From then what you witnessed at the Democratic Convention a few weeks ago, did that give you and your campaign a lot of hope? Since you're going up against the establishment in your state Senate race there around the Grand Rapids area.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we always knew that we were going to not be able to raise as much money as our wealthy opponents. But if we knew that if we organized the people and organized them enough to want to come out to vote, then we would have a pathway to victory. And to see that there was almost a 100% progressive victory at the convention, it's clear to me that the people are activated, that they're doing their research, that they're putting in the work to understand their candidates and pick the people who are going to fight for them. And, I've gotten some flack recently for sharing that the only polling that I know of in our race that's done through the ActiVote app. And as of the last time that I looked, we're up 80% to each of our opponents having 10%. And of course, it's not, it's kind of a wonky thing to do because it's kind of an active poll and they don't really exactly reveal who's all voted. But to my understanding, the only people who can vote there is people vote in that specific poll is people who live within the district. And so to see us up by, 80% to 10%, that's exactly what we want to see. And like I said, I've already started canvassing and I'm seeing the exact same sentiment from the people who I meet at the doors. And so if we just continue doing the work, we'll be the campaign to win in August.
Why did you decide to get in this race, Ivan? I mean, where do you think that you're a better choice than, let's say, Representative Phil Skaggs is also in the race, and I know there's another contender in there as well. Why did you feel like that you needed to be there and that you'll do a better job at being a stronger voice for the working class in the state Senate?
To be as clear as possible is because I am a working class Michigander, because I was born and raised in the district. We were the first campaign to file to run in this district. And we did it because we saw that these policies, again, a higher and living minimum wage, universal health care, housing, education, cleaning up our environment, not being corrupted by corporations and our broken political system. That's not what we saw in the people who were holding up their hands to run for office. And so we said, if the people who are putting up their hand to run for office aren't getting the job done and they're corrupt as hell, then why not put our name in the hat? Why not put our hand up to see if the people want something different? And I believe they do want something different. And so we'll give them a chance to do that this August.
Just wondering, this would be a good chance for you to talk about, how you're like other politicians who run for certain seats. And maybe you can share with us all the corporate donors that you have in your campaign.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm proud to say that I don't have a single corporate donor. All of the money, we've raised around $11,000 in total contributions from people who live in our district, from the average working class Michigander, not from corporations, not from PACs, not from leadership accounts that are used by politicians to funnel cash from places like DTE and Consumers and Blue Cross Blue Shield to other politicians. We're not that. To the point where, I was told years ago that I shouldn't run for office. I was told that I didn't have a chance going up against Phil Skaggs and his corporate machine and, his little political mafia that he's helped create in Grand Rapids. But I'm not scared of that. I know what I'm going up against. I've seen it up front. And there's this saying in Mexico that goes something like, el que nada debe, nada teme, which is basically he who owes nothing has nothing to fear. And so, again, this is not about me. It's not about my political career. It's about getting these policies done for Michiganders and fighting for them. And hopefully helping to create a different political system that's funded by the public, not by corporations, and that responds to the needs of working class Michiganders and not just corporations.
Hey, before I let you go, what are you hearing on the campaign trail out there in your district around Grand Rapids? What are some of the main, I guess, I don't want to say complaints, but issues that you're hearing from voters? Like, what's really on the top of their minds?
It's economic issues. It's feeling like they're being pushed out of the city that they call home, whether it's, their rent rates going up or their property taxes going up, their insurance rates going up, their wages not keeping up, them seeing our government wasting money on foreign wars or to hand out to corporations. That's what pisses them off. That's what makes them angry. That's what they're worried about, catching an illness or having a fall and going thousands of dollars into medical debt. That's what scares them. That's what they want their representatives, the people who represent them, to focus on. And so, again, I truly believe that the things that we're fighting for is what the average person wants. And all we have to do is help get the message to as many people as possible so that come August 4th, the people will not only elect us, but elect people like Abdul, like Lily Cheng Schulting, people who are going to get the job done, like Ellie Savitt, like Garland Gilchrist. Again, if we want something different, let's elect some different kinds of candidates.
All right, Ivan Diaz, Progressive Democratic State Representative for Senate District 29. Thanks again for joining us. Oh, and hey, where can people learn more about your campaign and where they can help out and volunteer or even donate?
Yeah, of course. They can check us out at voteivandiaz.com. They can go, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Send us an email, shoot us a text, and we'll be in touch.
All right, Ivan, thanks again for putting your sensible strong working class voice in this campaign and for pushing an agenda that puts our interest over corporate interest. I'll make sure to provide links to your campaign wherever people are listening. So thanks again for coming on. Keep up the great work, and we'll be keeping an eye on what's happening out there in Grand Rapids in your campaign, okay?
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Helping push a strong progressive message from Kalkaska to Kalamazoo, from Monroe to Marquette, from Detroit to DeWitt, from Trenton to Traverse City. Okay, Pat, I think they get the idea. It's Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. Show archives are available wherever you're listening to the show. Left of Lansing is now on Patreon. You can check out a complete archive of the show and other stellar content Pat doesn't share on the show. Visit patreon.com/Left of Lansing. Become a member for free. And check out Left of Lansing on YouTube as well. Now, here's Pat Johnston.
I just wanted to say here real quick, Ivan Diaz talked about that race at the Democratic Convention for the University of Michigan Board of Regents, and it's being reported by the Detroit News that unofficial numbers collected by the Michigan Democratic Party showed that nearly 2 out of every 3 of the 6,500 members who voted in that race supported the lawyer and challenger Amir Maklad over the sitting Board of Regents member Jordan Acker. That was a huge, huge victory. But it's sad that I'm seeing some in the state Democratic Party say this shows some anti-Jewish biasness. Again, the same voters backed a Jewish American, Ellie Savitt, to be the party's attorney general nominee. Jordan Acker did this to himself, as not only did he declare war on pro-Palestinian student protesters, but text messages showed that he was using sexually suggestive language to describe fellow state Democrats, not to mention some of these pro-Palestinian student protesters. As I said last week, nasty, nasty business. To portray this as anti-Semitism is the lowest for some in the Michigan Democratic Party. They know why he lost. A special thanks to Ivan Diaz for talking about his campaign and his working class vision that he wants to bring to the state Senate in Lansing. You know, again, like other progressive Michigan candidates that I've interviewed here recently, Ivan Diaz cares and is one with his community. You heard similar sentiments recently in my talks with progressive congressional candidates like Aisha Faruqi or William Lawrence or Kyle Blomquist. I mean, it seems to me that those who've spent the most time in their districts, who fought battles in their districts, who've gotten involved in their local politics or who've gotten involved in other ways to represent a struggling working class, which includes marginalized voters, of course, it seems to me that they tend to be more on the progressive side than those who are backed by the party establishment. It's just something I've picked up on. And you know, one reason that I started this little project was, yes, to voice my progressive and democratic socialist ideas and ideals, which I wasn't always allowed to do in terrestrial radio, but it was a way to also help connect with fellow progressives across the state. I wanted to help amplify the voices of hardworking progressives like Ivan Diaz, who fight the daily fight against the political machine in Grand Rapids and now wants to do it also in Lansing. And like our awesome show voice Jessica says at the start of each and every episode, this podcast is about helping make Lansing's political machine work for the people instead of the billionaire Epstein and DeVos class. I'll link to Ivan Diaz's campaign wherever you're listening because every volunteer, every share on social media, and every dime goes a long way for someone like Ivan who's not really getting any backing from the party establishment here in Michigan or from the corporate media. So check out his campaign, all right? The LOL weekly web poll for this week. Would you support a bill giving Americans making $500,000 or less a $2,000 check with no questions asked? Your answers are yes or no. Again, would you support a bill giving Americans making $500K or less a $2,000 check with no questions asked this year? And your answers are yes or no. I'm asking that question because I've seen some Democrats in the U.S. Senate propose tax cuts, but I think rather than tax cuts, perhaps we could just hand out checks to the working class, like we did during COVID. The economy is cratering. The working class is struggling. This would be a solid way for Democrats to show that they are fighting on behalf of that working class. And don't tell me we can't afford it, since we're already spending around $50 billion on Trump and Israel's war in Iran. We can afford it. It's just about priorities. You can vote on either the Patreon page or my YouTube page or my Twitter page. Time now for the Left of Lansing last call. It's hard to overstate what an earthquake this will be for American politics. That's what UCLA law professor Rick Hasson wrote on electionlawblog.org in reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to nullify Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. All 6 MAGA justices voted to put the final nails in the coffin of a law that restricted racial gerrymandering in the country. And I have to tell you, I'm just loving reading MAGA politicians and influencers showing who they really are as they say, you know what, that law, it was outdated. The voting rights law was outdated because, it was passed so many years ago and Section 2 was passed way back in the early 80s, as if that's a long time ago when we're talking about this country's entire history. And you see how giddy they are in states like Florida and Louisiana, as they're already working on finding ways to weaken the votes of people of color and especially weaken the votes of Black Americans in the South. Now, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was passed by Congress, overturning a 1980 SCOTUS decision, by the way, by banning laws and electoral maps found to be racially discriminating, even if not done intentionally. It was a just law. But now the MAGA majority wants to pretend like, hey, everything's great. We have no more racism in the country. And they voted to reverse the law, saying that plaintiffs will now have to prove themselves that they are being deliberately discriminated against. Good luck with that. So that effectively exterminates the law, which was always the final game. I remember a time, which I was told for so many years, that Supreme Court justices should never legislate from the bench, when that's all this MAGA court does. And remember that recently MAGA Justice Clarence Thomas gave a speech where he declared that progressivism has done much harm to the country. Yeah, meanwhile, he takes all that bribe money from billionaires. While he and the MAGA court also ruled that presidents are apparently immune from any kind of prosecution, so we should just treat them like kings. But that decision means that the Voting Rights Act is dead, and with it, the Congressional Black Caucus's numbers will dwindle, and that is sad. However, I am seeing establishment party supporters pointing and wagging their fingers at progressives for allowing this to happen since they wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. But let's stick with the facts. I seem to recall that a higher percentage of Bernie Sanders supporters backed Hillary Clinton than Clinton supporters backed Obama back in 2008. I voted for Hillary Clinton, but I couldn't change the minds of millions of Americans who rightly or wrongly simply had a crap opinion about Hillary Clinton. I couldn't change their mind, and the country wasn't in a good mood even in 2016, as we saw not only Donald Trump catch fire, but Bernie Sanders won a number of states against the powerful Clinton machine, including right here in Michigan. I knew Hillary Clinton had a messaging issue, and saying that we'll protect this and we'll protect that while still fighting and still keeping with the same broken policies that left the working class feeling helpless just didn't move the needle. Saying, hey, you know what, I love NAFTA, just wasn't a winner here. I'm hearing Democrats yelling, we told you to vote for the court. That's why I voted for Hillary Clinton, but I didn't hear Hillary Clinton making that case all of the time either. Wasn't like she was pounding that message home to voters. It was just, don't vote for him. He's nuts. And when Democrats regained the White House, I didn't hear Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, or Nancy Pelosi push to expand this crooked court, which serves at the whims of the regime and the Epstein Class. Hell, since this decision was just released, I'm still not hearing Democrats advocating to expand the court. But establishment Democratic folks are really good at wagging their finger in your faces rather than ever taking or accepting blame themselves. And in that way, they're maniacal, just like dear leader himself.
You're listening to Left of Lansing. Music for the show and everything else on Left of Lansing is provided by Wanderbeats. To hear the latest project and complete music archives, check out Space Leopard on your favorite streaming site or subscribe to Space Leopard on YouTube. Now, back to our favorite progressive voice in Michigan. It's Pat Johnston.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of The Left of Lansing. Special thanks again to Ivan Diaz, state Senate candidate for the 29th District, for visiting us here again. Oh, and I want to congratulate one of our favorite Michigan State representatives, the progressive fighter around Traverse City, Betsy Kafia, on announcing that she'll be seeking her third term in the State House. I'll have to invite Representative Kafia on the show because it's been a while since she's been on. Always love talking to Representative Kafia. I'm also thrilled that I got my passport last year, which means when I use it, I won't have to see dear leader's stupid smiling face staring at me. And I am hoping, whoever is the Democratic nominee for president, that they say one of their first orders will be changing the passports and destroying the ballroom too. leftoflansing@gmail.com is the best way to reach me, and sign up for our Patreon page for free and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Remember, take the battle to them. Thank you, Michigan.
You've been listening to Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. Left of Lansing was produced by Pat Johnston, brainstormed by Pat Johnston, researched by Pat Johnston, written by Pat Johnston, edited by Pat Johnston, and yes, hosted by Pat Johnston. Technical assistance by Dr. Heather. Thanks to our good friend Rich for website assistance, and thanks to our good friend Kirsten for the awesome podcast logo. We thank Audio Boom for publishing the podcast every week. Visit leftoflansing.com for more news and information. Thanks again for listening to Michigan's premier progressive podcast, and we'll talk with you again next week.